Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the McNees Dixon, loaned to me by eKnives. Thanks so much to eKnives for loaning this knife to me for review. This will go back to them when I'm done. You can pick this up at eKnives. I will link it down in the description. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's up to you. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Make sure your notifications are on for the Metal Complex YouTube channel. That really helps me out a lot. A lot of you are going to go down to the description and you're going to click the link and go to it and go, oh my gosh, the price. It is very important to start this review off because I don't think nearly as many people are as familiar with McNees as they are Hinderer or Demco or Chris Reeve, right? The reason I'm bringing those names up is because those are small batch in-house USA knife makers, knife companies, right? These are still production knives, but they are made in a way that is substantially more expensive than what they will inevitably be compared to, which is Kershaw, Spyderco, Benchmade, or Chinese knives. The Chinese knives make no sense. I mean, if we're going to say Magna Cut and titanium, I can get that for $200 from company X or Y. Sure, Chinese company X or Y, right? Now, you can have your preferences and you can buy what you want. If you don't value U.S. manufacturing, anything like that, then certainly, buy the thing that makes sense to you. But that doesn't make that magically disappear. It still goes into the price, and the price is based on what this costs to create. Now, I do have my opinions on the price tag, but it's important that people understand this. Kershaw makes production knives in the USA, but not the same way that Hinderer Knives makes them in the USA. And also, they're, titanium. There's a lot of titanium involved here. So in-house, small batch, USA knife making like this, it is extremely expensive. You will see it consistently across the board. That is the tier that we are looking at here. So keep that in mind, and we'll go through specs and we'll do the review, and then I'll give you guys my thoughts on the pricing here. Let's go ahead and measure it. The overall length of this guy, quite a bit bigger than the PM Mach 2 3.5 inch. That was the last one I reviewed. 8.25 inches here. It feels slightly larger than that. I think it's because the frame and blade are tall, but it's 8.25 inches. Blade length is actually 3.75 and cutting edge is 3.7. A really, really good blade to handle ratio here, in my opinion. Let's do some size comparisons and put it up against the Demco 8010 and my own Excalibur. Any custom scales in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. So while it is 1/4 inch shorter than both of these knives, you can see here it fits right in. It's definitely in that full-size knife category, big and burly and robust without being too cumbersome. Let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. This knife resembles a Spyderco knife, kind of. It's almost like the Sleesh Bowie, kind of. I have one and I should have pulled that out. It is still different. It's got maybe a little bit of Shaman in there. I don't know. Let's put it up against the Shaman. Kind of. Shaman's 8.25 as well, right? A little bit. It's like a more visually palatable Spyderco knife, in my opinion. So yeah, okay. Tell me what you think about that. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. Okay, let's talk about the action. How is the action on this knife? First of all, access to the lock bar is very good. It's not cut more on the show side, but it is cut out enough to be able to access that area pretty easily. I'm not sure. I wish it was more of a soft scallop here because it comes to kind of, not a sharp ledge, but it's just an abrupt ledge. I'd be lying if I said that really affected me too much disengaging it. The only thing that bothers me a little bit is that there's no real perfectly safe zone. Like, even as far up as I can get to engage the lock bar in a convenient way, I'm still just barely catching my thumb on that sharpening choil. I like it when knives have enough of a choil that I can catch myself on a non-sharpened part of the blade, but truthfully, that's a pretty nitpicky complaint. You can disengage and move your thumb out of the way if you want to. The blade is very, very smooth. I just like that, a lot of times the blade will bump my finger, and it is catching my fingernail. I just don't love the feeling of a sharpened edge banging into my fingernail. Of course, you can close your knife with 2 hands, right? But for those of you who like to disengage your frame locks this way, you will be meeting a sharp edge one way or another. Deploying the knife, the opening hole is completely and totally accessible, and because there is Scalloping on both sides, which is something we rarely see. Usually they leave it open on this side for the thumb, and then the other side they're like, well, whatever, good luck. Reverse flick, what's that? What's a newfangled thing with these kids and their balisong tricks? Reverse flick, why would you need to engage the hole from the other side, giggity? Well, because some of us like to do that. That's how some of us prefer to manipulate our holes. I mean, our knives. So, okay, jokes aside, it's nice to see that that's in there, right? I mean, it's nice to see that we've got that. Reverse flicking this knife, very easy, second nature. In fact, Spyderco fans, you'll really like this. It really does feel good. The detent is good. It's tuned well. It's a bit of a thunk, right? It's not really a click. It's more of a thunk. It works though, and there's no detent play. So if you really need your detent to be clicky, this doesn't do that, but it's not a bad detent. In fact, there's no detent lash, so it's great, right? And it maintains really good centering, which we'll look at some more there. But honestly, the action on this is really, really good. And you're not going to be able to see it in the video, but it does run on bearings. So let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It is slightly thicker, but it's contoured, which is a big part of that. I know people will look at this knife, and when I did the unboxing, there were a few comments, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's so much for that knife. And when I pressed people to explain themselves as to why they thought it was too much, most of them, in fact, none of them had a very good answer. They just felt like it shouldn't be that much. And what people don't realize is a lot of times you're reacting to something visually. When it looks simple, then you relate it to something that looks similar and is less money, which in many cases, those of you doing it right now, you'll realize that you're comparing it to a Chinese knife and it's less. It's not because it looks the same and the company's just charging less for it. It's because it doesn't cost that company nearly as much money to do it. So my point is it's okay if you don't find this visually appealing or you find it visually too simplistic to justify the price tag. But that doesn't mean that the price should be less. It just means the knife isn't for you. Fortunately, they do make many different variations of this knife, and I'm actually going to talk some more about that, something that could make this a little bit more visually appealing to other people, but not every knife is made for every person, right? So yes, it does have that simplistic look, but contoured titanium is a big part of what goes into that price, especially when we're considering that this is a small batch USA product. So anyways, length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3, it's a big item. It's not too big though. I didn't have a problem carrying this. In fact, this is right up my alley in terms of what I enjoy carrying, so I was perfectly happy with it. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. We have a T8 for the pivot, which is fine. I think it could be bigger, but it's fine that it's T8. And then this was a confusing thing for people in the unboxing, but these are actually T8 screws. So yeah, like there's a guy who got on me like, you complain about the Kaiser and you now complain about this? And I was like, well, this is T8. I think some people just thought that these were T6. They're not. These are all T8, including the pocket clip screws. Unfortunately, no spot for a pocket clip to be mounted for left-handed carry. So left-handed people just have to carry this in right-hand pocket, which many of you have told me you just kind of have accepted, which is a bummer. It's a bummer that they just have to accept that. I think that we can find a way. There's many ways to accommodate for left-handed people without creating eyesores for right-handed people. But that's the way that it is, right? Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness while the calipers are in line of sight here, because I always lose them. Blade stock thickness, I'm going to guess this is at least 150. Yeah, oh, it's 150 on the dot, 150 thousandths. Okay, and then let's weigh it. What are we looking at here? We're looking at titanium, and we're looking at MagnaCut. What's the HRC of their MagnaCut? Right around 63. I've had this confirmed by multiple different sources. 63 HRC in their MagnaCut, so they're probably hitting 62 to 64. But, you know, many different people I've talked to said that they aim specifically for 63 HRC. So the weight on this guy, do we have any milling for weight reduction? Actually, there is a little bit of milling for weight reduction. We're going to change the units here, and then we're going to hit the tear button. Go to 0. Thank you. The weight on this guy, coming in at 5.4 ounces, which is heavy for a knife of this size a little bit, but not too heavy considering it's full titanium. The balance on this knife is just a bit back of the pivot, but it is right in that primary index finger position. So honestly, it feels pretty good. Not going to lie. Okay, let's go ahead and move into the meat and potatoes here. The PM Mach 2 3.5 inch is the prior to this knife was the one from McNees that I liked the most, but I still didn't like it enough to add it to my collection. The first one I handled was not great. But I could tell, I was like, this is a newer company, they're working on it, right? The second one I handled, I thought was substantially better. I think they have only gotten better since then, and this knife proves it to me because this knife is beautifully well made, right? It looks very simple, but it is. This is clearly a company who has figured out how to make the knives that they want to make the way that they want to make them, and they're up there with their, general competition zone, which again would be your Chris Reeve knives, your Hinderer knives. Now, they typically don't like to do the shinier finishes, but that doesn't mean that they're lower quality. They just like a more worn look. But the overall execution and the machining are incredibly good. Absolutely. The ergonomic lines on this are really comfortable. It is bizarre to me that they don't have jimping here. We're going to have plenty of people saying at that price point, nobody's going to use it, so why does it matter? If that's the way you think, you are mistaken. I bring this up a lot. I polled this on this channel. I asked of everybody here who actually owns knives that are 500 or more, what percentage of you, actually use these things, and the end result of the poll, which by the way is still public, you can still find this on my community tab, it was over 75% of 12,000 voters. So while there are plenty of people who buy knives in this category, right, at this price range, who do not use them, the majority of people, at least right around the $500 territory, are still using them. It's not until you get up to the $800,000-$900,000 zone that the majority sort of flip-flops and people become, more so collector enthusiast dominant in that market, right? So that opinion is largely shared by people who do not actually buy this stuff. And it's okay to, number one, it's okay to think that. The reality is different. It's okay to think that. And it's also okay to purchase this stuff and not use it. But these knives are not art knives. They're not meant to be put on a shelf and just looked at. You can do that, but they are absolutely made to be used. They are not delicate, and they are not inferior to less expensive knives. These are tools. So that being said, I don't know why we don't have some jimping here. This is a perfect spot for it. It just feels like they forgot to put it here, honestly. Outside of that, it's really, really comfortable. The edges are not abrupt. They look like they're abrupt, but they're actually knocked down decently. Very, very comfortable. In fact, again, it's like a bigger, more robust Sleesh buoy without copying the lines exactly, right? That's kind of what it makes me think of. It's like the Sleesh buoy from Spyderco has been working out a little bit. Very, very comfortable. We have got to talk about this edge. Oh my God. This factory edge and the grind on this thing. This has an aggressive hollow grind. And the slicing ability on this thing is nuts. It is nuts, the geometry. Listen, 63 HRC Magna Cut is fantastic. That's great. And you're going to need some, obviously we want the HRC to be higher so that you can maximize the edge retention of, Magna Cut. But even at that high HRC, Magna Cut in particular, that's its biggest claim to fame is the increased toughness or its ability to resist chipping at that high hardness. And even when we have a really delicate, thin cutting edge, Magna Cut can help these types of knives stand up to the use that they're meant to, endure. And I think that's just incredible. This is a phenomenal, at 150 thousandths, this thing, it cuts like an Opinel. This is ridiculous, right? Now, I'm just cutting paper here. People be quick to point out, well, if you cut something thicker, like cardboard or styrofoam or whatever, then you're going to have to push that whole wedge through there. True. But the edge itself is done very, very well. This is beautifully well sharpened. I really like that. Sharpening choil is a little bit stubby. Some people will find that to be obnoxious as you continue to sharpen it over time. I'd like to remind people, especially newer people who don't understand the complaint with the plunge grind, it doesn't take too much wear to get to a point where you're going to start creating a smile, or more material looks to be removed at the cutting bevel back here, and it sort of leaves this unsightly mark. This does not make the knife inoperable. And we have to be very careful about this when we got to remember there are people who don't know as much that might be watching or reading these comments. So if you have a personal complaint about a plunge grind, it's completely and totally reasonable to say like, oh, I wish there was a better plunge grind on some of these knives, right? Because I like my edge to, look great and be completely functional all the way back here and not look bad, right? But to newer people, even when the plunge grind is bad, it does not render the knife inoperable over, like a short amount of time. It's just like back here, the edge just doesn't look as good and may not perform as well as you continue to remove material. A complaint that is much more valid is when a stop pin is actually interacting with this area too close to where material will be removed rapidly during use and sharpening, in which case that would render the knife inoperable or nearly inoperable after just a few sharpenings. It's two completely different things. I had somebody in the comment section get really confused about that, but perhaps discussing it is just making it worse. This has a little bit of a, kind of stumpy plunge grind, right? So it might bother some of you and it might not with others, but either way, the knife will continue to function for a very long period of time. The stop pin, by the way, does not interact in the sharpening choil, rather this flat zone underneath the blade right there. You can actually see where it's interacting there, so it's not going to make any difference. Anyways, it says McNees on the blade, and then it says Magna Cut on this side, and the American flag right there says USA. I like that. Very minimal billboarding. I think that looks really, really good. The blade is nice. It's just an aggressive, maybe not really a trailing point, just like an elongated clip point here with an aggressive hollow grind. Really, really excellent slicer there. So we have just a couple of body screws. I would have loved to see a frag texturing. Now, they might actually do that, and I just am not aware of it. And, I feel like in my mind I've seen one before, but I don't know if I'm actually making it up and comparing it with the frag versions of the PM Mach 2 3.5. But I think some texture on here would just be phenomenal. They would probably charge a little bit more for it if they do it. And the more I think about it, I'm almost certain that they do. I feel like I've seen it on their website, right? So perhaps they do. I think the texture patterns go a really long way. But if you want one that's not textured and just smooth, well, they obviously have it here. The barrel spacers back here, that's it. There's no back spacer. That's fine. We do have it's not a stamped clip. This is still a milled clip. You can see here, it has the shape and body of a stamped clip, but it is actually a milled titanium clip. So there you go. It's pretty high retention, but in and out of the pocket is good outside of just being a little bit like aggressive on the tension there, but in and out of the pocket is fine. Pocket clip bill itself, you definitely can feel it. I'm not going to say it's like, oh my God, it's unusable. You can feel it a little bit, especially if you squeeze it really hard. No big deal. There is really only one part of this knife that I am legitimately disappointed with, and I don't think it's a deal breaker, and I'll explain why. The lock bar here is a straight up carbidized titanium lock face. Now, the steel lock bar insert in this case is not, I'm going to say that I wish that it had it. Not because I think that there's an issue with excessive lock bar wear, because as long as the titanium lock bar is carbidized in the lock face, the life is still incredible. To reference older Sabenzas, we still have some early Sabenzas that are still out there doing just fine. We still have some early XM18s pre a lock bar insert that are just fine. Strider never did it. There are plenty of people who EDC Strider knives and they're just fine, right? So it's fine. A lock bar insert can absolutely increase the life of your lock bar, and it can also make it infinite technically, because if it does wear out, which is very unlikely, the chip can just be popped out and a new one can pop back in. Great. The reason I want it there is because they usually double as over travel stops. And I think that this is a good thing. The pocket clip is hanging slightly over the frame to where it would meet the frame lock if you push it too far. In fact, I can feel it, and the tension is very heavy on that pocket clip. So I think it's insanely unlikely that you're going to both disengage the lock bar and create enough force to overcome the pocket clip tension as well, and then bend the lock bar over so far that it's unsprung, which means it's not going to lock back up. Very unlikely. Technically possible. This should at least have the Hinderer LBS on it, which is that disc right here. that makes it impossible, or almost impossible, for the lock bar to overextend. And it also makes it impossible for the lock bar to bend in this way, which is apparently something that can happen. Ideally, I think we just put a lock bar insert in here, and it does the lock bar insert thing and doubles as the over travel stop. I think that this is the best thing to do. And I also think that this would, when you guys, if McNees is watching this, if you guys have maintenance things or people have issues with lockup, I think that ultimately would make it easier on you guys to do like the customer service thing, and then, pop the chip out and then put one back in with the proper geometry. I feel like that's probably, a better solution than having to replace the lock side, right? So bare minimum LBS disc, ideally put the steel lock bar insert in there. I think that's better. I mean, it's 2025. I think, I don't think this is a deal breaker, but I think you're just going to make a lot of people happy by just coming up to the same standards that, a lot of your competition has. Just put that lock bar insert in there and do that, right? Outside of that, though, really, really nice product. Really, really great. We have absolutely zero blade play, up, down, left to right. No lock stick. We have no pivot lash, right? Very smooth and consistent in here. Really nice. No bumps or lumps or anything. That detent, a little bit thuddy, but it's fine with no detent lash and absolutely perfect centering. What is the price tag on this knife? Base price is $625. How could it? I've seen knives that look like that. You've probably seen Chinese knives, right? That cost what? You might see, like, for example, you might see some Spyderco knives that are made out of titanium and some really nice steel that costs a little less. Still, Taiwan is where you're going to see those lower manufacturing costs. Do I think $625 is justified on this knife? No. Do I think that it should be reduced by hundreds? Absolutely not. I think that you are more so in your Les George and Chris Reeve territory. I think their pricing is a little bit better. Hinderer likes to charge $425 for titanium on the lock side, a titanium liner, and a G10 scale. And then if you want an additional titanium scale, you pay $200, making it a $625 knife. I don't think that it's quite up to exactly the same level of quality there. It's very, very close. But I also think Hinderer full tie knives are overpriced. Right? I think a better price for this is about $525 to $550. So I do feel like this is high, but I don't know, maybe $575 max. It is a really, really nice knife, though. What's really going to help, I don't think $625 is the right price for this, even if they do put the steel lock bar insert in. I would like a clickier detent. I think that's just going to go a long ways with like just the feeling of satisfaction and quality. It's kind of what like buyers in this territory expect, is that click into the closed position, right? Do I have a frame lock out here? Am I completely and totally frame lockless? I don't. I have the Alpha Beast, right? But that, I don't know that that's the greatest example. Oh my God, I have my own knife. People want that click, right? This one doesn't really sound that much different. This is here we go. This is the Gen 4, the final one here. So I look like I'm plugging my own knife here. I don't have another frame lock out here. This is what we're looking for. That's what people want to hear, right? That doesn't change anything functionally, but if you're spending this much money, people typically like to hear that, right? So anyways, putting a steel lock bar insert in this is going to go a really long ways. And then I think if you could get it, if this knife was like $575 or so, I think that'd be a lot better. Is this a bad buy at $625? No. In fact, I think this is the best knife that they've ever done. And I think this is a really nice, honestly, for the category, I just really like it. I think some people are going to look at it and say it's plain, or it's too, kind of like blending into everything else around it, that it lacks any specific character or anything. Kind of, I don't know, like you could kind of say that, but I just like it, and it's definitely a good cutting tool. If you are big into small batch USA knife making, but you still want that hyper precision, you still want just as much precision as you get from the really high-end Chinese production knife world. You want all the premium materials. You want it to be a cutting beast, right? Maybe you want to do something different. You've got too many Hinderers and Striders and Demkos and Chris Reeve knives, right? You want to do something different. I think you'd really enjoy this. I think you would, right? Price is a little high. Not a bad product at all. In fact, a very good product. Generally speaking, a pretty recommendable product, but I want to see some improvements. I'd like to see a version 2 of this that's got that steel lock bar insert. That's going to be it today, guys. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.